This is part one of a two-part podcast.
In a world on the brink of social collapse, one website stands above the rest to fight back the zombie horde of corporate trolls. Permies.com. Take back control of your destiny and protect your loved ones from the toxic gick coming at you from all directions. Strap on your overalls and start building that bunker of abundance with the good vibes and friendly, helpful insight found at Permies.com.
Looks like it. We're live.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. All right. Today we've planned to have...
Oh, wait, suddenly I can't hear you.
Oh. Andreas, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So, all right. This is we're calling it Grow Our Own Food. And it does seem like, at least here in the Missoula area, there's a lot of groups about gardening, but they seem to be about gardening in other ways or gardening for other people or something like that. There's here in the Missoula area, a lot of people are very interested in the peas farm, which I kind of feel like growing food for a farm is a very different mentality. And I want to, but it's very different from when you try to grow your own food. And so, and then there's also the 1,000 gardens, where people try to build food gardens for other people. And I kind of feel like that's certainly a cool thing and all, but again, it ends up being like your motivations and the directions that you go are a little bit different. So I was kind of hoping that we were going to have a panel of like 6 or 7 people, and we could all talk about what are our thoughts on gardening. Just, we don't have any pre-set up stuff, but all of the 6 or 7 people, out of all of the 6 or 7 people that are supposed to be here, so far I just see M is here. And it's like, well, that's kind of sad. I mean, it's lovely to have you here, M, but at the same time, I thought there'd be a whole bunch of other people. We were going to have this very robust conversation.
Yes, it's kind of a shame.
So I kind of feel like, so we're talking about areas with climates similar to Missoula, Montana.
Yeah, and for reference, I'm in New England, which is the same hardiness zone, but a little bit wetter and lower.
How much precipitation do you get there?
I can't think of it off the top of my head, but usually we get like... So I can describe it by the season.
Now you're going to go look at... So I'm going to say that in Missoula, technically we average about 13 inches of precipitation per year. But I'm a little outside of Missoula. And when I bought this land, I looked at the things that were growing here and the kinds of soil, and I speculated that it might be closer to 20 inches for this particular property. And I've had that verified 2 or 3 times by other experts. And so, but we haven't measured it. And I get so annoyed when people are like, well, why don't you measure it? And my answer is this very snotty, why don't you? But of course, when you're trying to do so many things all at once, something has to give. So we have never measured the amount of rain we get here every year.
So in my area, there's the nearest city is about 40 inches of precipitation, and my area is probably a bit lower because we're in a rain shadow, but...
Okay. So 40 is a lot.
Yes.
And if you have a bit...
But then in summer it gets really hot and the soil dries out really quickly.
Okay.
Convenient. Well, I hear it's probably nothing compared to what happens in Montana, but... Well,
if you have a little less than 40, maybe you have 30. And the funny thing is that 30 is the annual precipitation for Seattle, Washington, which is
oh, wow.
famous for rain. but Seattle all summer long is very dry. And so a lot of, I've heard from people like, oh, I went to visit Seattle. I was very disappointed. I was expecting all this rain, and it was sunny the whole time I was there. There was no rain.
Yes, we get this big dry period around July usually, and then, or more like June, early July, and then into later July and August. Well, there's a big snow that fell off the roof. Later into July and August, we get these storms that keep coming in, and sometimes we have rain every day. But at some points, it's just, especially when you're starting seeds, it's the really dry part of the year.
So I want to point at the picture that Andreas has up on the screen. That's some crocuses that have popped out here. I took that picture a few days ago.
Oh, wow.
And so our life here is beginning, which is early for us. We usually don't see crocus blooms until later in March, like maybe March 20th or 25th, something around there.
And here we have all the snow still on the ground, although it's melting today, but such a beautiful weather today.
So, all right. I think that since we don't have all the people that we wanted to have to do this panel, then I'm going to open it up. I'm going to touch a topic to kind of get started, and I think that one of the things is when it comes to growing our own food, it has been my impression that 99.9% of people are utterly certain that growing our own food costs too much and takes too much time. And so the way that they express this is that you need to spend $20,000 to grow $5,000 worth of food, and the amount of time that it takes you. Okay, is somebody juggling a dishwasher in their background? So, sorry, just heard this extra sound and I stopped to be like, oh, and what's the other thing? But okay.
Yeah. Mic off when you're not talking.
That might be a good idea, especially if you're going to juggle dishwashers. So, the other thing is that people are kind of like, by the amount of time that you would put in, if you were to work a minimum wage job, that you could buy the food at the grocery store and be dollars ahead than if you were to pay yourself minimum wage for the amount of time it would take you to grow food. And I want to say I do not agree with either of those. In fact, I want to go so far as to say I think that a person can spend $10 on gardening and put in maybe 3 hours and end up with thousands of dollars worth of food. And so and that these other people just are not aware of this. And that's why they choose the path that they choose and why they're upset about it. Okay. Okay, M.
Okay.
So I know you want to talk about foraging here in a moment, but do you have your own garden?
I do. It's sort of a lousy one, but which is why I wanted to talk about the foraging. I have mostly perennials, like some sea kale. I also plant regular kale and lots of chives, herbs. And the parsnips just grow wild everywhere, so I don't need to plant them. They're kind of my root vegetable, and there's this amazing potato variety that I grew from seed that I plant every year that provides lots and lots of potatoes, along with a few others that I plant. So okay, let's start with this.
first of all, I believe that 99.9% of all people are certain that the cost of growing your own food is greater than if you just went to the grocery store and bought it. First of all, 99.9%. Would you agree that 99.9% of all people have that opinion?
Well, I think it might be a case more of. I think a lot of people, at least around here, know that it's cheaper to grow your own vegetables, but they think it's the expense of labor as opposed to the expense of the food itself. This is kind of a rural farming community, so.
And I want to point out that because you mentioned that this is a rural farming community.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like it's important to convey that when one is farming, then you're thinking about like, okay, I need to be able to harvest a whole bunch of stuff all at once. So I kind of want it to be all on at about the same time. And whatever it is that I grow has to have a great shelf life. I need to get paid a lot of dollars per hour. And it needs to be something people will pay good money for. And then, of course, they need to be familiar with what's growing. So it's like, how do you if you're going to be farming, it's like my primary motivation is profit. And there's some things that you're not going to profit from because it doesn't have a good shelf life or it doesn't pay a lot or something like that. There'll be something that'll go sideways or you'll grow it and then you'll have a hard time finding buyers for it. And so, and then the other thing is that because of the choices that you've made, most farmers will farm on flat land so they can get their tractor in there.
Yes. And there is, this is kind of a mountainous area, but there are some big flat areas that are mostly corn and soy and the ordinary. What I meant to say is that it's kind of a place with deep roots where people knew what their ancestors did to survive, even if they didn't, to survive and be healthy, and even if they don't see it as relevant for themselves, they know how their ancestors gardened from what they had and could sustain themselves that way.
Where are you located, Em?
In New England.
Thanks.
So I see that some of our other panel people finally arrived. You guys were supposed to be here 15 minutes before we started.
Welcome anyway.
Yeah. But maybe we ought to get an idea of who else is here and and then we could start talking about like the 99.9% thing and then also about how much money and time stuff about gardening. So I see boxes here. I see one that says Alexandra.
Mm-hmm.
So Alexandra, whereabouts are you?
I'm in Kamloops, which is kind of north of you guys and across the border. West of Calgary.
Oh, okay. Are you in BC?
Yeah. Kamloops is the indigenous name of Kamloops, BC, Canada.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But your climate is similar to that of Missoula?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So about the same cold, about the same moisture levels, stuff like that?
It looks like we get maybe an extra month of growing season and a little bit hotter summer temperatures than you guys, or at least more sustained warm months in the summer. but about the same. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. And I see Miranda.
Yeah, hello. I'm located in Minnesota, so we're zone 4B. We probably get a little more rain than Missoula, but, we are frost-free probably May 15th to October 15th each year.
Yeah, that's about the same as us. Although this year's going to be a very early spring, a very early growing season.
Yeah, we've had above freezing for the last week, and then overnight we got about 2 inches of snow last night. So I have hoop houses, so it's like the things in the hoop houses I hope are covered enough that they didn't freeze too bad. But that's mostly onions and strawberries.
Now, in fact, okay, so now you're mentioning hoop houses. And then when we start to look at the thing about 99.9% of people are certain that gardening costs more than buying groceries at the grocery store.
Well, I have to question, love. 99.99% of human beings don't ever do anything the same. So pushing your number that hard makes it very tough to agree with.
Oh, okay. Fair point. I'm going to say, so for example, Mike Hazel is my co-author for the Skip book. And he's been out here to my place leading projects for years. And it seems like a year or two back, I was visiting with him, and he went to a gardening conference, like a food gardening conference, a conference where everybody there grew their own food or grew some of their own food. And he was in this giant room, and it sounded like there may have been nearly 1,000 people in this giant room at this conference. And the question went up for the group, and these, of course, are people who paid money to attend this conference. The question went up for the group, how many people believe that growing your own food saves money over buying it at the grocery store? And Mike was the only person to put his hand up. I mean,
I understand why. And okay. I think it depends on where you're located, whether you're urban or rural, and whether you are choosing to cost in your own wage for the time spent growing food.
So now I'm not even touching the cost, paying yourself to garden idea.
Yeah, which is why...
I'm not even touching that yet.
Yeah, so I factor a $25 living wage into any of my costing. Because the only way that we can actually create a world functionally in the future where humans are more sustainably in alignment with the earth is if we can realize some sort of financial equilibrium in it. And the truth is, we almost never, we do a lot of farming to turn into value-added products, and we sell those value-added products. And we almost never ever make $25 an hour. And I'm talking about Canadian $25 an hour. So that's maybe about 18 for you guys. And almost never do I realize that profit margin on the time spent to create the food and then the products from the food. But that is my goal because, it's the only way we have a sustainable world is if all of the people's basic needs are met. And then for us, we're growing in an urban environment. So even before I start, I think our water costs are about $4,000 a year. And then our property taxes and, the cost of this land being an urban plot is more expensive. And if you're on a mortgage, then you have to factor that in. So that's why most people are going to say it is not profitable or cost effective to grow food, because if you need to have a functional wage, it doesn't really fit in the North American model.
Okay. I want to try to finish the thing I had started. Mm-hmm. And it goes like this. The thing with Mike's event that he was talking about, it sounded like there were about 1,000 people in that room, and Mike was the only one who raised his hand.
Yeah.
And so mathematically, just that example, 99.9%
of the humans in that room. So that's a cool thing to know about people and how we're feeling about food. And I think it's different if you inherit land and you're living on land and you don't pay a cost for your land. And if you have water that is easily accessible and you don't pay a cost for your water, which really should be the case for all human beings, in my opinion, but it isn't, and this is the world that we inhabit. And then if seed saving is something that your people have done for a long time, then the seeds are also free, right? So then the only thing that you're factoring in is your time.
And I would say the seeds that you save are a lot better than the ones that come from the store.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to, I think what I heard you say is you agree that my math for that one example is correct. 99.9%. And then it has been my general observation that conversations on the internet that I've observed or other people talking, it seems that 99.9%, and granted, this is a number I just made up, 99.9% are convinced that that the cost of gardening, just the cost of gardening, ignoring the mortgage and the cost of any water and the whatever else, just the cost of gardening is greater than the cost of buying the food at the store. And at the same time, that same set of people has a second belief in addition to that, and that is that if you were to pay yourself minimum wage and there were no costs at all for growing your food, then it would still be a losing proposition than just going to the store and buying food. And so what I want to do is to say, no, and I hope that I've pushed many, many times a message of like, here's ways where you might spend nothing to maybe $10 or $20, and with maybe a half an hour of time, maybe as much as 3 hours of time, you produce this enormous amount of food, and all you have to do is harvest.
But Paul, you need to water, you need to weed, you need to pick bugs off, you need to go through all of the different stages. One of the things that I share at our farm to table fairly often about the food economy is if I plant a cauliflower is going to take 1 meter square of space, and it's going to be in the ground for about 8 months. And for the 8 months that the cauliflower is in the ground, I'm going to need to water it once or twice a week, and I'm going to need to weed it, and I'm going to need to nourish it, mulch it, give it organics, and pick the bugs off of it. So if I want, let's say, 25 cents a week for the time it takes me each week to care for my cauliflower, and the cauliflower is going to be in the ground for 8 months, it's an interesting proposition to then take it to market where people want to buy it for $1.99. And that literally would be 25 cents a month for the time it takes to care for and harvest and then transport that vegetable to market. So I think those are the equations that people are looking at now. Well, I don't want to be negative because I grow. I mean, my husband and I realized without ever really choosing it that we've been on this land for 2 decades, and I don't know, they put the water meters in for our city maybe 15 years ago. And so consequently, we have invested a huge amount of money in watering a food forest. And I would never have even questioned that because there's beautiful trees and they need to be watered. And it never even occurred to me to do the math or to question whether or not chopping down the trees was more reasonable. But in the same 2 decades, Paul, every single house in the entire neighborhood has chopped down almost every tree. Yeah.
Okay. Alexandra, do you know what your precip is there? Your annual
precip is at all. Oh, precipitation annual? We are in a desert grassland, so very little precipitation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So on my property, we started this, and I mentioned that Missoula has an annual precip of 13 inches per year. But I think that my particular property, which is a little bit more into the mountains, because Missoula is in a bit of a valley, I think that I get 20 inches of rain a year, but I could be wrong. But I've had, and this is based on my own expertise in the area, guessy guess, looking at the trees and the soils, and I've had it validated by a few other experts. So maybe it's 20 inches per year here. And I do have some videos that I've put up on YouTube where here's all the stuff that we're growing and we have never irrigated. Yeah. And so, but that would be
then that's a huge cost down. Yep.
Not only a huge cost eliminated, but even more, a huge bunch of time eliminated. Now, we have taken steps to irrigate that exact same thing because we're trying to build soils. And it's like, okay, let's get our soil to be richer than it has been in the past. Because there are some things that are like, this is plenty of water and it grows and it's happy and everything is great. But there's also some things that are like, this was not enough water, so I've decided to die. And it's like, all right, I want to grow more things. And in order to be able to do it without irrigation ever, then I'm going to irrigate for a couple of years to build the soil up, to build the organic matter that's in the soil. So that way I won't need to irrigate ever again and yet, grow more things. So
I hope too.
You said water, weed, and pick bugs off. And so I think that the thing that I showed in the video, we had never done anything. We had not watered. We had not weeded in any form. We hadn't pulled any plants out, any undesirable plants out. We just left it there. And we definitely didn't pick bugs off. But we had food production. We also had a lot of production of non-food things that volunteered. And for each species, I have a different set of thoughts. But there was a lot of food growing there. Now, I think that there's like 2 big things out of all of this, and that is that the cost, and this is where, and now I'm forgetting even who brought it up, but somebody said something about like, was it a hoop? Tunnels. They were, I can't remember what words they used, but.
Miranda, you have a growing house, a tunnel?
Yes, I have some hoop houses that I do not heat, so I grow directly in the ground, but they do give me about another 4 to 6 weeks of growing time each year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I was starting to ask about that because I think that when people are saying like, oh, it costs too much, growing food costs more than buying food. And I think that hoop houses would be an example of money spent, because I'm going to guess that you get one good year out of a hoop house. Is that about right?
As far as the structure?
Well, more like the plastic. That is
the plastic I have right now we replaced due to a hailstorm 6 years ago, but it's been on there for 6 years now. It's starting to get a few holes in it, which I patch up.
Okay. So that is awesome. 6 years out of that. So
yeah, that's a 6 mil, so it's a nice thick plastic.
Okay. So. There's other bits and bobs to get your hoop houses, and there's like the skeletal part, and there's the part where you clip the plastic onto the skeletal part, and then the skeletal part needs to kind of be pinned into the ground in a way, but it's possible that over the last 6 years you may have spent $30 or $40 on bits and bobs to kind of keep it going, including a bit of duct tape here and there to kind of patch up any openings. So, but I made up a number, $20 or $30. Does that sound about right for the last 6 years, or is that more of an annual maybe?
My small hoop house is 17 feet by 48 feet. I have a 17 by 48 and then a 30 by 46. For my 2 main grow houses, I probably spend $100 a year on replacing wood for doors or patching things up. So these are 18 feet tall or more, and they are large spaces for growing. So this isn't a little caterpillar tunnel.
Wow.
But yeah, I've bought one secondhand for about $1,000 off an auction, and one of the others I got through the EQUIP grant, so that I spent about $5,000 on that structure.
And Miranda, what do you grow in them?
I grow a variety of things for farmers market. So right now I'm planting beets, radishes, lettuce, carrots, garlic, onions, peas, beans. Trying to get those early season things as soon as possible. And then as I get those things harvested, I will go over to tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, hot peppers. I try to put my bell peppers in early so I can get some nice big bells by the time July and August come around.
And the houses really give you so much more heat in the growing season that increases the yield of those, hey?
Yes, it heats up the soil a little earlier in the spring. I have to monitor them because they are totally manual. I don't have anything automated in there. So on a sunny day in January when it's, 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside, if the sun comes out, it can skyrocket to 100, 105 inside the hoop house if it's totally sealed up. So you have to be careful because I do have perennial herbs in the ground there that I let go dormant. So I have to always kind of open it up a little bit in the winter so that those don't get fried on sunny days.
Nice.
And you really have to water in there all the time because they don't get outside precipitation. So that's one thing you're just constantly, if the sun gets hot, it'll bake the moisture out of the soil pretty quick.
And it ripens up your tomatoes way fast.
Yep.
Something.
Yeah, I'm a good my tomatoes in there get planted 4 weeks or more earlier than the plants that I have outside. And then they ripen an additional 2 or 3 weeks faster than the ones outside.
Put Paul's brain on your plot. Do you have a hunk of land but don't know where to start? Do you have a world-changing permaculture idea and you need some feedback? Do you feel like the guy in overalls may inexplicably hold the keys to all your wildest permaculture and homesteading dreams? Well, you're probably wrong. But if you want to give it a go anyway, you can hire Paul for a consultation. He will be all yours for the whole entire hour. Schedule your Paulversation today at permies.com/consult. permies.com/consult.
So I was wondering, there was a video from a while ago. It looked like it was happening at Wheaton Labs. There was this garden bed that was heated by rocket mass. Was that truly at Wheaton Labs, and is that still up there? If it was,
we have that, and it is up here. And I'm going to try to find a weird way of answering this question. We have a lot of projects going on here, and whoever's in the boot camp at the moment, kind of, they've got some projects that they like and some projects that they don't like and whatever. But I'm going to say that I think about a year ago, I think Stephen fired that up a couple of times, and he measured that it did make the growing bed like 2 degrees warmer. And I was kind of thinking, like, is that all? 2 degrees warmer? And so
maybe if you combine that with the stone walls for... Never mind.
Well,
is it covered like a Wallatini or a hoop house?
In the open air, I think.
This is an experiment. Mm-hmm. We call it the season extender. The idea is to be an alternative to a greenhouse or a hoop house or a Wallapini or our truly passive greenhouse. It was an experiment to like, so your growies could get full sunlight, because of course under the hoop house or any greenhouse, some of the sunlight is being filtered out. Mm-hmm. It's just the nature of those kinds of things. They, like the very best ones, the clearest materials, you still filter out about 30% of the sunlight. That's when they let the most sunlight through. So we were like, well, what if we were to do this? Would we be able to extend the growing season dramatically while still being able to harvest all of the light? And I want to be clear on this. I think it has not yet been fully and properly tested. Gaining just 2 degrees with just a couple of little tests is not enough to call this test complete. Yeah. But it is indicative of, it did warm it up some, and it's like, okay. Yeah. But it's also like those were short fires. And it would be
in an extended timeline that you could see more heat trapped in the ground, I think.
That's kind of where I was going. I agree. And so, but I also think it's more of like, if a person wants it to work, they might do it differently than a person who's kind of like, oh, I just want to spend an hour checking out the novelty of it. Does that make sense? So, but all right. You were asking about our rocket-powered season extender. And yes, we have it. But no, I don't think it's been properly tested. I think Stephen did like 2 burns in it, and they were like 3 hours per burn. But But I also think that the fire might have gone out a few times during the 3 hours as he was like doing other things simultaneously. And it's like, oh, let's just see if we do this a bit. How warm does it get? How much warmer does it get? So, love the idea of coming out this time of year and giving it a real test. That'd be cool.
I could see maybe doing something like that in a little pit for seed starting, where you dig a pit in the ground and maybe have some proper drainage if that's an issue, and like so that there's a sun scoop as well as the rocket component that are heating seedlings up. That maybe, or maybe not, since I know you don't really like transplanting very much, right?
Right. I'm going to avoid transplanting, but I wish so for this gathering that we have, and it is fun to hear, because like I also kind of want to point at Miranda and say Miranda's doing more than growing some food for herself. She made it clear not only are her hoop houses, I don't know, I want to say that's bigger than a hoop house. I always kind of feel like a hoop house is oftentimes 3 feet tall, or maybe a really giant hoop house will be 6 feet tall. But she's got like, wow, those are greenhouses there. But she's doing a market garden. Am I right, Miranda? It's a market garden is a big part of what you're doing. It's a business.
Yes, I've been growing for our family primarily, and then bring the extra to farmers market, usually as value-added property or value-added foods. When you talk difference between hoop house and greenhouse, generally a greenhouse in the catalogs, if you're buying a new structure, a greenhouse would have shelving in it with plants in pots, and a hoop house in the catalogs is when you're growing in the ground.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Can I mention another thing, that there's some species that are really good at, they're very good at growing when nothing else is around. And I'm thinking especially about garlic mustard and James Rocket, which are both considered invasive in this area, but I love them because as soon as the snow melts, I can go out and pick all these green vegetables and put them back, cook them, and have a meal of green vegetables that are foraged from the wild, and they're invasive. So but there's some of these species that are really so hardy that they'll grow right from, they'll be growing sometimes even under the snow, but right from snowfall to snowmelt.
Yeah. A huge part of our food forest is all wild. I say wild settler and indigenous plants because both come up out of the soil base here, but it's a huge part of what we eat all year.
Yes, definitely. It's such an efficient way of doing things because they pop up exactly where they want, and they don't pop up where they don't want, but then something else takes them, which in most cases they have some kind of medicinal or edible use that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if you guys have been listening to some of the podcasts we've recorded over the last few months, or seen some of the video things that we've done in the last few months. But I think about the last, as of about 8 months ago, I have been advocating for something, and it's mostly out of concern with this 99.9% thing, where people are kind of like, it is, or they are certain it is not possible to grow food for less at home. Like homegrown food is always going to be more expensive than store bought. Or the whole thing about the amount of time. okay, I'm going to try and say a thing here. I'm trying to convey what it is that I've been advocating lately. And so, the thing I've been trying to advocate for is this thing that I call the automatic backyard food pump, which is something where it isn't going to be very marketable. So it wouldn't fit for a market garden approach. But so, for example, I'm in Montana, and yesterday someone was here, and I was kind of pointing at our gardens, which are mostly dormant. But look, there's a crocus, and there's some budding rhubarb. And it's like, look, right there. Do you see that? That's a sunchoke. And look at the sunchokes that are just lying on the ground, that because it produced so many sunchokes, some of them came out and just rolled down the hugelkultur. And if you look around the base of it, you can see that there's a whole bunch more that are like begging to be eaten. And we harvest them all winter. And so we can harvest those today. Now, sunchoke isn't super great for market gardens for a bunch of reasons. But I think sunchokes are super great for somebody who's trying to grow their own food. I also pointed out, like, look over there. Those are walking onions. We harvest those all year. And so now, of course, walking onions are not a chef's favorite because they're smaller. They're not as big as a giant storage onion or a giant sweet onion. And so because they're smaller, it takes more time to process them. And but they are kind of a stronger flavored onion, so you don't need as much. But some can argue about whether that's a benefit, a plus or a minus. And then, of course, I want to point out to our visitor yesterday, look at all of our kale. But a goat got into our paddock and wiped out all of our kale. So it's all gone. But this year we are, and this is part of why I wanted to do this, grow our own food. We are planning on growing some more things. And part of what I want to advocate for is growing foods that are more soul building. And by that I mean that a lot of crops have a very tight harvest window. And if you miss it, all your previous effort is wasted. And even more than that, they require certain levels of discipline. So as Miranda is doing things with her hoop house, or I think earlier it was Alexandra that was talking about all the watering and weeding and picking bugs off. I kind of feel like if you have plants or foods that have needs like that, then it can be soul draining. Whereas if you have plants that seem to tolerate all conditions and you haven't done anything for 3 years and now there's this bumper crop and it waits for, it's like it'll sit in the ground waiting for you to harvest it for the next 6 months. So you get this giant harvest window. I kind of feel like that's a soul building crop because it didn't.
Definitely.
Em, you're saying something?
Oh, I just said definitely, and I think I'm just my mind is going to the oak trees too, because I just have these memories of like sitting down under oak trees and just sitting in place for a half hour. My basket getting heavier and heavier, full of these delicious, nutritious nuts, and that's such a soul building thing.
See, now I wanna even go beyond that, because what's the harvest window for acorns?
About like
a month?
maybe 3 weeks to a month. Yes.
Yeah. And on top of that, are you eating acorns raw?
No, I'm leaching them, but for me, I don't know. Some people might find it tedious, but I just kind of, like, twice a day I pour out the water and boil some new water and add it in. And after about a week that they're ready.
Okay. The place where I'm going is to say that, and to score points on this mysterious fictional scale that I'm making up of, like, what's a soul building crop versus a soul draining crop, then it's like, okay, being able to eat it when it's raw is a big plus. So walking onions, well, you can eat them raw, but you probably would find that unpalatable.
Okay.
But once they can be cooked fairly easily into things, and it takes very little cooking, and it's ready to be consumed. But the sunchokes can be eaten raw, and the kale can be eaten raw. And so I think that there's something, and then, I've picked these because they have large harvest windows. And I think that large harvest window adds to the soul building part of it. And when growing our own food, I mean, the thing is that, because, like, so many people try to think about this, the things they're going to grow in the garden are the things that they already eat, which is wheat, corn, and sugar. And I kind of want to say, like, okay, let's pretend for a moment that those are very expensive and you're not eating those in general. But what I want to do is to switch the gardening to the things that are, like, the easiest and the most soul building.
That is what we do in our food forest, Paul. I don't actually grow cauliflowers, but that story is one that I tell to help people understand why there is a cost to the foods that we grow. And so, most market gardeners, they are going to be weeding and watering and nourishing and picking the bugs off. And so when you look at a cauliflower, like, people all the time, if a cauliflower goes up to $4.99 or $6.99 or $8.99, the whole world is freaking out that that's too expensive.
Right.
But for the person who's paid for that yard of land, it is very little money for the work that it has taken to care for it. So that's where, the conversation comes up. Because, like, in our area, we have big agricultural farms. So I can buy, 25 pounds of carrots for organically grown carrots for $1 a pound. So I don't grow carrots. I don't grow cauliflower. I don't grow potatoes, because those are things that I can buy in my local environment for very little money. And that's what those people are saying is, why is this expensive? But what you're doing is more like foraging, quite honestly. You're not growing a lot of agricultural crops.
Yeah.
You need a lot of attention. Yeah. So I'm totally with you. Like, our forest here is every type of berry and fruit that you can grow in this ecosystem, and then a whole lot of greens and a whole lot of sunroots and a whole lot of herbs. And those are the ones that grow with very little care or time. We also grow tons of edible flowers, which is what makes a little bit of profit for us as growing, is local chefs will buy those really unusual things at a fairly high rate. Yeah.
Can I mention something too?
Yeah.
So with the there's a technique that our ancestors so much, that was boiling their greens, which is kind of a way to modern people tend to frown on boiling because it's supposed to remove nutrients and things like that, but what I've noticed is that you can eat a lot more greens that are boiled than, especially wild ones, than ones that are just eaten as a salad, which is what most modern people typically go to first. And there are these kind of techniques where you can take the greens and turn them into this protein-rich meal that's rich in all sorts of other things aside from protein, but
and reducing the toxicity of them, which is
exactly.
a big one too.
And like spinach, I boil spinach because of the oxalates that I eat gigantic amounts of.
Yeah.
So, and it sounds like, okay, so it's true. What I'm trying to do is create a garden. And that's another thing, too, is I feel like a lot of the people that I have met that choose to not garden, that they think of themselves as gardeners who just happen to be not gardening right now. And a big part of it is that they are convinced that they don't have the time and that they can't really afford doing it right now. And so I want to try to provide solutions. I want them to be gardening again. I want them to be growing their own food. And so it's kind of like, well, what do I need to do to help them get there? And I kind of feel like these three crops are great crops for that. They can do a little bit now, and then they could be busy for 6 months, maybe even a year. And when they come back to it for a moment, there's all this food waiting to be harvested. And they can grab some then. And then as they enjoy it, they're like, wow, that was really great. And there's 100 times more where that came from. So I can go get even more still. And so, but you're right. It basically turns your garden into a foraging experience of sorts. Mm-hmm. I think, and I guess that's what I desperately want to encourage, because so many people are choosing to not garden because of the idea of it's so expensive. And when you look on YouTube to get advice on how to start a garden, it's like these people are buying these metal boxy looking things that they put out in their backyard, and then they go buy potting soil to fill these things. And but
that's because they live in a place that they don't have access to your dirt, right? They live in a suburban area. They have a small plot of grass. They have no soil. They have no compost. And even if they tried to dig in the ground that they have, they would have, maybe 1 foot of topsoil to grow the grass in, and the rest would be fill. Because you're talking most of the world is in fairly urban areas now. So that tub is a way of bringing something organic into a super, toxic urban environment.
Well, yeah, when I was doing urban farming in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, we would help build urban gardens for people. And their problem was their soil was so contaminated in that urban environment that we had to, often put raised beds on concrete.
Yeah.
So we would try to show them how to do like the Ruth Stout lasagna method growing so that they could do some composting in place without attracting rats, and work on doing the raised beds when they don't have access to perennial land growing.
Yeah, most people don't have so much land as you do, Paul.
Well, that is all true, and yet I foolishly care deeply about these people wanting contemplating growing food in their backyard. And the point I was trying to make is that when they turn to experts on this topic, I think that the experts paint a picture that makes it so that the amount of money you have to spend on your food is more than if you just went and bought it at the grocery store. And that's because it's like, in this example, it's like, okay, you go and you buy this big metal tubby thing, this metal box, and then you go buy all this potting soil. And now you made some very good points about, well, they might not have and there might be this, and there might be that, and there might be, and it's like all fair. Yeah. My point is I want to counter the advice that they got from the so-called experts. And I want to say a thing. So, for example, in this thing that we're looking at right now on the screen, it's a metal tub filled with potting soil. And part of what I want to do is say, like, if you just took away the metal tub and stuck some woody bits on the inside, then the woody bits would act like a skeleton, so it could all be kind of upright and getting up off the ground. It would hold a shape similar to that shape.
Like a hugelkultur.
Exactly where I'm going with this, of course, because that's my go-to for damn near everything.
Okay, but Paul, my mother comes into my garden and she goes, why would you want that many sunflowers? And why do you have straw everywhere? It's so messy.
There are different artisans, to be sure. And but the thing is, the point that I want to make at this moment is that I can pretty much triple the growing space. I can get 3 times more food to come out of that without buying that metal box. So whatever the metal box cost, I've saved that money.
So we need to recognize that the majority of suburban and urban North America and Western Europe, they want very tidy, very contained experiences of reality. They are not comfortable in chaos. And so that is part of it. One of the things that you could encourage people to do to make gardening in an urban environment or a suburban environment feasible is you could encourage them to, one, use recycled containers to build their hugelkulturs in if they need that containment. And then you could also encourage them to grow baby greens, because that is the one place that they will get a conscientious harvest in a very tidy way every week throughout the whole growing season. And they're snipping, baby greens with cut and come again scissors actually creates a functional profit model in terms of I save money by growing my greens. Like we use probably 4 to 6 bunches, like grocery store bunches of big greens every day. And when we're growing from February to November, or sometimes December and January, just depending on what's growing, we're good. But if I have to go to the store and buy that's in our region right now, that is $30 or $40.
This podcast is continued in part 2.
Hi, this is Mark. There are a lot of reasons to get angry these days, but I prefer to focus on the positive things that we each can do to make this world a better place. The book, Building a Better World in Your Backyard, Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys, is a great resource for just that. Instead of throwing my arms up in frustration at governments or big corporations, there's a list of ideas that we each can tackle to affect change. Information about this book and other resources can be found at Permies.com.